So we will get this caucus started. I apologize for the delay. We had an executive session before this that I'll announce at the beginning of the meeting. But in terms of our ARPA plan, that's what the subject of this caucus is about tonight. So the floor is yours.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here this evening. On behalf of Anzer Advisory, we're pleased to present an update since the last time we were here. One of our colleagues, you can see up here on the bottom left-hand screen, was stuck in Texas because of storms, so he wasn't able to make the trip today. He's here, and we'll pipe him when needed. I'm Dave Jahosky. This is Desi Navarro, Corey Burbach's up on the screen. If you could refer, I'm just going to skip right to the third slide of the presentation, the objective. And really, if we think about this, it's providing an overview of the proposed spending plan and to obtain council feedback. What we've handed out to you is a copy of today's presentation, as well as the compliance report that we will touch on a little bit later as part of this presentation. But really, the main focus of what we're here today, if we slip to the next slide, is really we wanted to kind of recap some things that have happened since the last time we were here. I think we were here at the end of March. I think it was March 29th. During that time period, the budget challenge was still open. We had presented some of the, I call it the conceptual framework, and some of the ideas and the categories of where we were looking to identify programs and really kind of helping to develop the overall program. Since then, we have received the results of the budget challenge, which Desi is going to talk about. We have finalized the draft proposed spending plan and the report, for which you have a copy of. And really what we want to do is we want to use this as a launch pad into talking about the spending plan itself, as well as some of the results. And really, at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Desi to kind of have him walk you through the spending plan and the budget challenge at this point.
Thanks, Dave. Yep. All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Very good. So, like Dave mentioned, last time we were here, the budget challenge was still open. It was open for the majority of the month of March. Closed on April 4th, and the result of that budget challenge was over 100 survey responses. And if you guys recall, the question was to community, if you had $100 to allocate to the different ARPA programs, how would you allocate that? So up on the screen, what you'll see is the findings of that budget challenge and how that compares to the current proposed allocation that the city has developed and come up with. Community on the left, city on the right. So you'll see quickly there's a good third when you look at the city asset reinvestments, economic recovery, housing, green infrastructure that were almost in direct alignment with what the community was looking for. Same thing, you'll see a 20% green piece of the pie as well. That's streets and business corridor. That was also directly aligned as well, which is great. So really good on that front. Areas where we saw there might be opportunities for some future alignment would be in stormwater, parks and rec, and public health and education. And actually, since the results of the budget challenge, the city team that's been working diligently on this ARPA program has even allocated a few more dollars to that parks and rec bucket. And I think, we'll continue to look for opportunities to do that. Stormwater is one of those types of projects where, there's a lot of costs that go into it, from feasibility, design, construction, all the way through closeout. And we know the market's still doing funny things, and it's probably going to be doing funny things here for a while. So once those projects get fully designed, defined, and bid out, that there might be an opportunity there to then assess that and potentially reallocate some funds from that bucket to a few of those others that we talked about. So overall, I think the budget challenge was great. It was a success, and I think there was some really good findings there to consider. So this next slide is the spending plan overview. So at this point, this is the proposed breakdown. On the right-hand side there, you'll see by ARPA category 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7, the overall proposed amount for each one of those categories. And then the subsets underneath each one of those categories show the city's programs that they've developed. So you'll see, the negative economic impacts category right now has the most funding allocated, but it also has the most subset categories within it as well. So A couple of the big hitters in there are the streets and business corridors. There are a couple opportunities for some notices of funding awards, which we're going to talk about on the next slide as well. But I think a really good spread and a really good mix here between all the different programs and what we saw come back from the budget challenge as well from community. So this next slide here is a summary of the notices of funding award and the proposed breakdown there. So of the total $68.7 million, currently, the allocation to those programs would be about 14.2. And when we say notice of funding award, these would be those programs that would open up to the application process, seeking applications that'll then be evaluated and determine, level of funding. But right now, the big buckets of funding there are for public health and education, housing, and economic recovery. And just a couple of quick highlights in there. Under housing, there's a home buyer program. It sounds like there's in the framework right now in the city that currently exists, but here's an opportunity with ARPA dollars with a little bit more flexibility that came out in the final rule to kind of expand that framework and really help those folks that wouldn't have an opportunity to buy a home to give them an opportunity to now do that here in the city of Scranton. Another quick highlight, the NEPA Thrives program under the economic recovery bucket. That's an opportunity to help with some workforce training for either the underemployed or the unemployed, get them back out into the working market, and really kind of just help out individuals as much as possible and the residents here of Scranton. Sure, and I think the last one here to highlight, and going fast again just to kind of keep time in mind, but under the public health and education, there's an affordable child care program. There's an existing, again, framework I think that was established through the CARES Act, but now with this ARPA funding as well, there's an opportunity to take the good that was being done there and really kind of expand that and broaden that to make affordable child care more of a realistic thing for more folks here in the city. Sure, yeah.
So as we've talked about with all of you in individual meetings, and I think we've stated here in our public caucus before, we know that we can't use these funds to start programs we can't maintain. We are not looking at this, and I know none of you are looking at this as some windfall where we get to fund some program that there's no way the city could sustain over time. So with the NOFA proposals, you see the types of programs that we know we can fund our great community organizations out there and have these be programs that can sustain. If we fund a program now with a community organization or, Desi mentioned NeighborWorks and some of the home buyer type of programs, entities like NeighborWorks can take those and run with them and potentially be able to find other funding and run with them on a sustained basis after 2026. But we want to be careful, and we're very happy to be working with all of you and have this public engagement, because what we don't want to do is start something that we are going to have to cut off in 4 years' time. So the NOFAs really, we wanted to put a bunch of these on the page that we've talked about so that you can see the types of programs we're going to be putting out. And we'll, for example, work with the school district on the NOFAs around education catch-up. We don't want to be putting out a notice of funding that isn't going to do anything, so we'll try to work with the experts in the fields that we're trying to help as we develop these programs.
Very good. So this next slide here is just a quick summary on where we stand with compliance. So when we were here about a month ago, we had presented an initial heat map to show how the different projects and programs populated themselves here on this risk project cost matrix. A few updates since then. You guys are still very much in the compliance category, lower risk, moderate risk. We'll continue to update this as we work with city staff and you all, but right now there are no projects here or programs that any one of us is saying would not be a good use or eligible use of ARPA funding. In addition to this heat map, which is very high level, you guys have a very detailed report, which basically narrates the entire process, everything we've been doing with the city staff and you all from day one through where we are today, just to kind of put that down in writing. And in that report, you'll also find by project, by program, the specific risk scores for each, if you're interested as well. Because dots on a page could obviously not as easy to read sometimes. So, and then with that, I'm going to kick it over to Dave here.
So one of the things that, as
Can I
we
ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
I was looking here, all these acronyms, NOFA, what is that?
Notice of funding availability.
What is it?
Notice of funding availability.
Oh, gotcha, okay, thank you. I just couldn't,
I had to ask the same question a couple months ago.
thank you.
No problem.
Notice of financial award?
I'm sorry?
Is it notice of financial award?
So it's notice of funding availability. This is what we do with our action plan. So when we subgrant out of the action plan, we put out a notice, and people then can apply for the funding.
One thing we'll make sure is that I believe in the report, we have an acronyms listing, because where I live, the SEC means different things. I'm from Florida, so it means the Southeastern Conference Football. Where Desi's from in New York City, it takes on the, indication of the stock exchange. So, great question, great point. One of the things.
Well, that's what I'm seeing on this page here. We have public health notice of financial award. So I don't know if that, the money is awarded at this point, but you're saying it's just being put up
Correct.
for
Be
individuals to apply for.
Yep, made public so that folks will know that there's potential to apply for that funding, and there'll be an application process that's then scored, ranked, and graded.
And that would be for public health, education, economic recovery, those areas?
Correct. So if you go to the slide following that, the one that's the NOFA proposal slide, that'll show you all the different programs currently planned for at this point.
That's the one that's up on the screen. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So one of the things we just wanted to highlight here is that, in this pictures is to illustrate really the overall process. It's not proportional in terms of the timeline, in terms of phase 1 and phase 2. But we are getting close to the end of phase 1, which was really, the intent of this was to produce the deliverable that you have. It's also about setting the stage, which is phase 2. Part of phase 1, some of the major things, that milestones that we have left to complete in phase 1 is the quarterly report, and that's due to the U.S. Treasury April 30th of this year. And then the other major, I think, event coming up is the commission meeting on May 10th. Part of what will happen after this point is, once you've adopted and approved your spending plan, that's really for us, it's kind of an arbitrary distinction, but it's really, we go from planning and concept to actually execution. And at that point, you will work with, getting out the notices of funding availability, working with the other specific vendors on the projects you've selected, and then there'll be processes that we will follow at that point. So that really where we are right now is we're kind of finishing up phase 1 as we migrate into phase 2. Our role is to help and then take what you've adopted and execute against that plan. And really, I think that finishes the prepared marks that we have. We want to be considerate of your time. I know that we're getting a little bit of a later start, but we wanted to make sure that if you had any questions, we left plenty of time for questions and answers.
Okay, I have a question. So on May 10th, obtain council approval on spending plan. Is that, three votes, 2 votes?
It's 2 readings. We're expecting to get that for introduction next week.
Next week, okay. And so final approval in 7th order would be May 10th. Okay.
Now, one thing I see here is intergovernmental coordination in April of '22. It's aligned with today, April 26, but there's no date for April of '22. Have you spoke with the county, the school district, the state? Those conversations have been ongoing?
Yeah, so Eileen met with the county officials a couple of weeks ago. I met with Larry and Weston. I met with Pat Laffey last week to discuss their plans, and those will be ongoing. The state and U.S. Department of, I think it's missing a T there, the U.S. Department of Transportation. So, Eileen is in constant contact with the state on a range of our grant funding. So we continue to be engaged with them, Larry and I have had some meetings with the governor's office and obviously the legislative offices we're all in touch with on a daily basis. So we're in touch at the state level to try to maximize these funds, but also pairing, most importantly, I think, pairing grant opportunities with these funds. The U.S. Department of Transportation has done a really nice job of having consistent communication. Senator Casey's office and Representative Cartwright's office have also done a great job of having lots of communication. We have a call on Thursday about the Infrastructure and Jobs Act with the Department of Transportation and Casey's office. So we're continuing to try to answer those questions that we can't answer yet. So, for example, in the stormwater bucket, we don't know yet what all the other funding would be, so we're not ready to allocate specific projects with these funds because we don't want to spend money, ARP money that we might be able to get funded through other mechanisms. So I think we've got a really nice coordination going on those levels. And I'd say with the school district especially, their ARP funds are very different rules than the cities. So the pieces that they're working on really don't have a lot of overlap with what we're doing. The county, however, staying in close touch with them is good because, for example, with broadband, they're potentially going to do some broadband. The state also, federal also. There's still a lot of questions around which levels of government are going to fund what with some of the money that's out there right now. But that's...
Mayor, do we know when the federal infrastructure funding is supposed to be released?
It's staggered in terms of the program. So the Councilmember Donahue, you were on the call on Friday with Representative Cartwright, right? So there will, on May 14th, Department of Transportation's Federal Railway Agency, I think I'm getting FRA correct me if I'm wrong, the FRA, by statute, on May 14th, they have to establish their program, and they will do a expression of interest. So our entire region will be working with Amtrak really to determine how we express that interest to make sure that it's clear that our entire region wants this program, and then there will be essentially an application process from there. So the call that we had on Friday was really helpful in kind of outlining what that next phase looks like. But the FRA phase of the IIJA is separate from some of those other pieces. The majority of the funding that we're going to see in Pennsylvania is running through PennDOT and PennVest. And so we're staying on top of what might be coming here, working with the Pennsylvania Municipal League and keeping up on that. A lot of what will happen, though, is going to come through those entities. So we'll keep advocating for those dollars to come to Scranton, but it'll be those state entities that are following those timelines.
So the infrastructure funds will likely address, you said PennDOT, like maybe state roads, bridges,
Roads,
things like that,
bridges, yeah.
not necessarily stormwater?
It remains to be seen what we might be able to do with stormwater there. So
Okay,
hopefully we'll be able to add to these dollars in some way, but.
thank you.
So for an example, you talked about overlap. With the broadband, the proposal is saying 3.2 million. I feel like I saw 3.4 at some point in time. You said there's some state money that's going towards broadband as well as county money going towards broadband. Do we have any kind of idea how much overlap there is, and then give an example of what we would do with that money if we indeed did not have to use the whole 3.2?
Yeah. So the state, probably earlier this winter, started a broadband authority, is that right?
That's correct. And then they just put an individual in place as the executive director, so it's very new in the state.
So I think we need to continue to communicate and get updates there, but we need to see what the state's going to do, I think, before we act locally on this particular piece, is our view.
Early indication from the state would be they would address areas where there is no broadband first, and then work their way out from there. We have talked to the county because the county has suggested that broadband may be one of their initiatives as well. So I think that is probably our best point of coordination around that, and then we'll see what plays out with the state.
I'm just using that as an example, because each one of these pieces is going to be the same thing. I just thought maybe that was the easiest, since you had already spoke to them about it.
It's the most salient example where we would have a lot of overlap, I think, with county and state, I mean, aside from stormwater, probably.
So since these funds don't need to be obligated until December 31st, 2024, this, whatever list you've kind of developed here can be adjusted accordingly based on the funding that comes from the infrastructure plan. So you'd probably be maybe a little hesitant to obligate those funds early, correct?
Yep.
Because until you get a full sense of what we're going to be getting from the infrastructure funding.
Right, right, but the timeline is very tight. As Dave said, that is not representative. Phase 2 is far longer than Phase 1, but it's going to come, those timelines for when we have to allocate the funds and when they have to be spent is going to come at us really fast. So to the extent that the broadband question, if we're sitting here next year and we're still thinking about it, we probably need to reallocate those funds because we might not be, by mid-2023, it might be hard for us to get something going. So we'll have to really keep at it and keep on it, which is the reason that we need the support, and we're happy for the support with our team here from Answer. And we'll be needing to figure out from our own internal standpoint what the resources we're going to have internally should be. The other piece of it is process for the legislation that we plan to send to you all probably this week for your first read next week, if that works. My thought is for Exhibit A to be, can you pull this up? So that it would be a resolution. Exhibit A would be what Desi's going to put up now. And then Exhibit B is, I think we should have a process document that we agree to between council and the administration. I have kind of three points that I think are important for us to agree on. One is the just quarterly update that I think we should come before council publicly on a quarterly basis. Already every quarter we have to report to U.S. Treasury, so I think that's a nice natural cadence. We can of course come anytime, but commit to a quarterly public update. And then 2, the procurement is going to be the same as it always would. This is federal money, just like the HUD funds. We'll have to, we'll put out for bid any work that we do, and then we'll bring those contracts to council. So even within those months before the next quarterly update, you all will be seeing, contracts for the work that we're looking to do. And then the third would be on the NOFAs. We will present, just like we do with the action plan, we put the HUD action plan through council, then we go out and do the awards, and then we come back to council and show you who got those awards. We would do the same with these, in the same way that we did the CARES Act as well, as we did the business grants. We awarded those, we came back to council with a list so that you could see where those were awarded. So, but I'm happy to discuss if there's other points that we should lay out for the purpose.
This piece here, page 1 of 2, is Exhibit A in this.
So so this would be Exhibit A that shows the buckets and our proposed allocation, which are estimates. I mean, the top line 1.0, 2.0, those top line buckets they're not fixed in that there could be changes, but we feel comfortable with that percentage of the total for those categories. Where you see on the far right, the actual cost, that's where we are confident that those are the dollar amounts that we want to put out there. So you'll see going through it that things that are in that notice of funding, $1 million for nonprofit grants. If you all agree to it, we feel confident we can get those out on the street and have those awarded. That's a very different situation than what you see doesn't have a cost attached to it, which would be our streetscapes. The streetscapes we're not ready to have a specific dollar amount allocated for a couple of reasons. One, we've applied for grants for a lot of those, so we don't know if we got those grants or not. Whether or not we get the grants will determine the path forward. Also, with the costs of construction materials and labor and really anything right now, it's really tough for us to estimate what we'll be able to do. So the actual cost on that right-hand side is where we feel we can move forward. Also, if you look down, kind of towards the end of the Meadowbrook, Meadowbrook culvert repair, we know that's $127,500. That's already a cost we're aware of. But some of those, the broader pieces, especially with stormwater, we don't have costs for those yet. That's definitely a work in progress and somewhere where we want to make sure that we're not doing something now that's twice the price as it would be a year from now. Did I miss anything? That's good.
So go back to what you were saying about Exhibit A and Exhibit B. So, and then page 2 of 2 would be Exhibit B. So we're saying we would,
Nope, that's just a continuation.
Okay.
The Exhibit B just doesn't exist yet. Exhibit B would be, my proposal is that Exhibit B be a process, just kind of a one-page memo where we commit to each other to a particular process. Just so it's clear for all of us and clear for the public that we're, following all the usual procurement requirements, that will come to you with those quarterly updates, that will, give you a list of the folks we awarded funding to after or as those programs go on.
so something similar to Exhibit A would be put in front of council to be passed and agreed upon, and then you would come back to us with who was awarded.
Right, yeah, which just like the CARES, those small business grants with the CARES Act, where you guys approved that we did those grants, and then we came back to you. There were a couple different rounds, I think, a couple different rounds of awards.
And how that was set up, where there was, here's the one lump sum that's going towards this, but they're going to be broken up into $10,000 grants, something like that.
Right, so we'll come back to you with a list of the people that we awarded those
But
grants.
we'll also get how those projects will be, or how those grants will be distributed in terms of the,
Oh, the funding rules and.
yes.
Oh, right, and
Yes.
that's a good point. Because also we'll want you all to announce that this funding is available, so we will be looking for this body to be making sure that the public is well aware of the funding availability. So, right, that those rules and opportunities will come before you.
And that'll be something we'll post on the website as well.
Yes.
That was something that I was going to mention. I know something that we had spoken about in our meeting last week, Ms. Cipriani. For the website and for the public to be able to view, I think it would be helpful to have our spending up there and, where we're at with each of these projects, if something's in progress or completed. I think that will be great for everyone to see, to know where we're at with the dollars.
So I think something like that, the rules of this money is one thing. I mean, the process is a separate piece, would you say? So what was the process that we used looking at that CARES Act money? Is it going to be the same process, a similar process?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, it's basically the process that we do for everything. I want to make sure that it's clear and that we've documented that these things that we're running all of this as we would any. It's different, it's federal funding coming to us in a different way. It's not our general fund budget, but I just want it to be clear that we're going to run it in the same manner.
So in other words, as contracts are awarded throughout this process, they'll all come before us for approval and
Just as they
go
would
from
usually,
there.
yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
And the website piece, so Answer, you have some of the infrastructure, the templates and things for the communications pieces, right?
we do.
Right. Yeah,
And the idea would be to build out sort of, as you're talking about, Dr. Rachow, sort of like a dashboard on OpenGov. And OpenGov has those, the ability to do that already. We've been working with Neighborly. Neighborly is the software that we use for our HUD products. So we're going to use that as the area to receive the applications. So they'll be able to come in through there and be tracked through there. It's a really, that's how we bring in our CDBG, home, and ESG applications now.
So when we're looking at this actual cost, this is costs that currently we already know. Like you mentioned the 120.
Cost is probably the, applies to some of those, others is just our program allocation. So Meadowbrook Culvert is a cost. We know that that's a
So you say,
specific
yeah, the
number.
127.5 is the cost of what it is. Now,
Right.
what does that
But-
include? What does that include?
On the Meadowbrook Culvert, that's the repair of the garage.
That's the repair of the
correct?
culvert.
The garage, the culvert.
Remember we demolished the garage?
Yeah, so we have, so this is the garage and the cleaning of the culvert and the repair of that.
Cleaning and stabilizing of the culvert, though, soil over it and grass and.
Which is different than the full project.
Well, this one, if you recall, it was bid out early on as emergency bid, so we actually have a number from the vendor. That's how we know that number.
So that's an actual cost. More, a project allocation, an actual project allocation would be, under education, if we want to, and we're proposing to you all through this legislation, we'll put up $500,000 for affordable childcare, $100,000 for community health, $250,000 for financial literacy, $750,000 for educational catch-up. Those are actual dollar amounts that we propose we allocate to those pieces. We would then, in turn, create the rules around a notice of funding available, put that out, and hope that we get, great applications of organizations in our community that want to help with those, not help, but take those things on and run them. We're not trying to run a childcare here at City Hall. That would be great, but we're not there.
Does anyone else have any questions? No? Thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take a 60-second break, and then we'll come back for our 6:30 meeting. I'll call this public meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community, especially Crane Holmes and Debbie Evans. Please keep the Holmes and Evans family in your prayers this evening. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Dr. Rothschild?
Here?
Mr. McAndrew? Mr. Donahue?
Here. Dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, Lackawanna County Planning Commission Subdivision and Land Development Evaluation Reports reviewed March 11th, 2022, March 16th, 2022, and April 6th, 2022. 3B, correspondence received from OECD regarding code enforcement report for council complaints dated April 19th, 2022. 3C, Regional Planning Commission Annual Report 2021, prepared by the Lackawanna County Department of Planning and Economic Development, received April 20th, 2022. 3D, minutes of the Scranton Firefighters Pension Commission meeting held February 16th, 2022. 3E, minutes of the Scranton Firefighters Pension Commission meeting held March 16th, 2022. 3F, minutes of the Non-Uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held March 16th, 2022. 3G, agenda for the Non-Uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held April 20th, 2022. 3H, minutes of the Scranton Police Pension Commission meeting held March 16th, 2022. 3I, Single Tax Office City Funds Distributed Comparison Report 2021-2022, year-to-date April 15th, 2022. 3J, minutes of the Composite Pension Board meeting held March 16th, 2022.
Are there any comments on any of the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
I have one. I mentioned this last week, but I just wanted to remind the public that this Saturday, there will be the Pine Brook Family Arts Festival taking place from 12 to 4, and that will be held at 927 Caucus Avenue. And there'll be a lot of family fun activities, music, food, so definitely bring your children and head down there on Saturday afternoon. Thank you.
Do any other council members have announcements at this
I
time?
have one. I'll announce what Norma gave us just earlier, that there's a Mother's Day baby pantry collection on Saturday, May 7th, and looks like Sunday, May 8th, from 10 until 3 p.m. at Naog Park. They're looking for diaper sizes, newborn 4, 5, and 6, and pull-ups 4T, 5T, all sizes accepted, baby wipes, baby food, cereal, formula, blankets, diapers, diaper bags, pacifiers, baby bottles, infant and toddler car seats, and no clothing, please. So that's May 7th and May 8th at Naog Park. I'd also like to thank, I guess it would be the Hill Neighborhood Association in conjunction with the Recreation Authority and many volunteers that showed up at Naog Park this past weekend for the cleanup. It was pretty well attended. I think we got a lot of work done to help spruce up Naog Park, and I was happy to participate in that along with the Councilman Donahue and Councilman Rothschild. The park is looking better and better. Tremendous amount of work is going into Naog Park, including the fountains in front of the Everhart Museum, and they're doing work on the mine, trying to reopen that, so it's really looking nice for our city park. Thank you.
Any other council members have announcements at this time?
Yes, I do. There's going to be a parks cleanup by the Greenwood Neighborhood Association. The dates are May 7th at the Islands at Caucus and Electric Street, and then May 27th at Pretzel Park on North Washington Avenue. That's all.
And I just have one, that an executive session was held this evening to discuss personnel and labor contracts. Mr. Voldenberg?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
Joan Hodowanitz?
Joan Hodowanitz, Scranton. I don't know how many of you saw this article in the paper on the 24th. It was an article written by Mary Jo Sheridan, your former treasurer. It's entitled "Battle Corruption with Fiscal Responsibility." And she's talking about how good accounting can help the city overcome its reputation for corruption. So I want to read some of this because it's not only something that every city official should read, but every taxpayer too. Financial management teams should monitor vendors for contract compliance. What does this mean? It means administrators and staff should routinely review and report internally and to the public, not merely at budget time with consolidated numbers that hide activity. Also, data should be analyzed to identify trends and anomalies. Reports to the public should be meaningful and easy to understand. How do the numbers compare to prior year-to-date numbers? How do they compare to contract terms and trends for comparable goods and services industry-wide? Do treasurers and controllers effectively fulfill their duties to ensure the collection of revenues and payment of bills are appropriate and accurately recorded and reported? If elected officials and vendors know a government's accounting staff, treasurer, and controller are competent, ethical, and watching the numbers, the environment will be far less inviting for ethically compromised officials to shake down vendors, to steal, misuse, or waste taxpayer money. Now, that only applies not just to city officials, but every taxpayer should be watching the numbers, asking for the numbers, demanding explanations, and following up. You know, you get the government you deserve, and if you're not going to put in the sweat equity into your government, you're going to get hosed. Speaking of getting hosed, the caucus tonight. If you didn't sit up there with a paper copy of the slides and you had to sit back there behind the railing, how useful would that caucus have been? Couldn't hear, couldn't see. What's wrong with taking those slides and posting them next week in third order?
We'll do that.
You know, similar caucuses that have slides like that. You got to share them with us. We're stakeholders. We're the ones who fork over the money.
We will do that. We didn't receive the
I
slides until
understand,
this morning.
but routinely, it should be automatic. The next week, they're in
Yes.
third order.
It will be in third order next week.
Yeah, and speaking of follow-up, this is day 116 of the year. It's April 26th. A quarter of the year is gone. What is the status of the labor union contracts?
They're still ongoing, to the best of my
Okay.
knowledge.
Was there genuine progress made? Did you get your information you asked for last week?
That involves negotiations. that I can't really
Did you
discuss
get any
publicly.
specifics? I mean, billable hours for Mr. Uffberg's firm for his $97,000?
I guess
Yes,
we are currently negotiating the
Yeah,
transfer
well,
of those documents.
Yeah, our solicitor's going to review them with
Okay.
the city solicitor
If there's nothing
first.
confidential about them, please put them in third order next week.
That's what we're still,
Okay? I would love to see that. And the sound system, should I make a donation in my will, a
so-
legacy, so that when I'm dead, we can hear back there?
I have a meeting set up on Thursday to start outlining how we're going to go about doing that.
Okay, so let it be written, so let it be done.
I'm hopeful that we could get that work done during our August recess, and then when we come back in September,
Hey,
we have that
I'm going
fixed.
to hold you to that.
I'm hopeful. Next on the list, Norma Jeffries.
Good evening, Council. Norma Jeffries, Scranton resident. And I had to chuckle when Joan gets up and starts talking about things, because as I was away for 3 weeks, and my son got married, which is always a wonderful thing for a mom, when they go ahead and do what they're supposed to do. So, but I did look at the YouTubes and watch some of them. And I told Marie when I came in, I said, how many years have you been talking about the stormwater? How many years? I've been coming to council, I've been back in town, I guess that's almost 5 years now, and I've been coming to council 4 years, and each time she's talking about stormwater. And I'm not sure if there's any advancement yet or not. They talked about a little bit from what I could hear from the presentation. I think the word stormwater was used. I'm not sure what they were talking about, because I agree with Joan. I sat there and listening, and you can't hear a thing. But something's funny, though, when you hear YouTube, but this is not, I don't think the caucuses go on YouTube, I don't think.
The public ones do.
The public
When
ones?
we have our normal ones, they don't, but when we have guests in, they go up on YouTube.
Okay, so then I'll be able to listen to that then and hear,
Yes.
because you do get good volume and good sound when you listen to the YouTube. But, so anyway, that's what I did. I did follow you guys when I wasn't being entertained, but, council is a part of my life now and see what's going on. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I do thank Bill King for addressing the drive-through for the Mother's Day weekend, but I just wanted to also thank all the volunteers. Nail Park is run all by volunteers. No one up there is paid. We all are volunteers. There's the board members up there. We have our meeting on the first Thursday of the month, and you're all welcome to come and to just help us make the decisions for the park, because we all enjoy the park when you go there. It's such a, they refer to it as a jewel of Scranton, and it is. It's definitely a jewel of Scranton. And when we call for volunteers, we don't mean just the young. I was volunteering. I've had knee surgery, and the other lady that was with me, she had some other issues. So what we did to help, we volunteered. We gave out the rakes and the bags and these little grabber things for people to pick up. So, there's something for everyone to do, no matter what your physical capabilities are. There's something to be done for you up there at Naog Park. So I put the notice out that we will be having our meeting on Thursday night, the first Thursday of every month at 6 o'clock at the community room up at the Naog Park. So I'm just hoping that my little flyer can go up. I'll be putting them around in our grocery stores, in the neighborhood, so that everyone can see that we're doing this drive for St. Joe's, and that we can, bring in a good amount of supplies for them, because they do. Now, the reason that they said they don't need clothes is that a lot of people bring things, the clothes, their kids, that they've outgrown things and all, so they drop those kind of things off, so they don't really need clothes. Some people were a little bit annoyed by that, but, if they want the donations to be those that are most effective and that will be used mostly by the members that come to get things, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
But I just have one question on that. For the diapers, do they have to be unopened, or could they be opened? Because I have sizes, 1, 2, and 3 that are open that we didn't get a chance to finish. Could I bring unopened or opened?
I'll get back to you, Kyle. I'll ask them. I was
Okay.
talking with the lady today, and You know, we don't want used ones.
No, yeah.
But you can tell when they're not been used because that little tape on there.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
that little tape, you know
absolutely.
right away.
Yeah,
That they're good or
yeah.
not, you know, but I'll
There's-
check it out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Next on the list is Dave Dobson.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson, resident. Where are we here? Okay. I don't know if it's a dead issue, but a few days ago, we had 3 firemen injured and taken to the hospital when a floor collapsed. And see, I read my Scranton Times. Anyway, that popped into my head, well, gee, maybe we could use a couple extra firemen. So if it's not viable, it's not viable, but it could use a little more consideration. This involves everybody, everywhere. And we had another anti-vax and anti-mask hero here last week. Well, I'm on my 4th vaccination, and I'm still here. You know, get vaccinated. Don't think you're some kind of hero by running around the country in a big diesel truck and going nowhere and protesting. I don't care much for protests because as soon as the troublemakers show up, then you're liable to get arrested for absolutely nothing. So I work in traditional. If I believe in somebody, I'll even consider working for them. I read the other day that our credit union building is going to the county again. Another building off the rolls in Scranton. It'll probably never be back on the rolls. And we really need to petition the state to take up for some of these property tax losses. And there was something I heard from the tax collector about a Friendship House building downtown or something. I'm not against anything, but the only thing I am against is paying all the more and more taxes for the whole county and the state. And it's their constitution that requires this. So that being said, I think it's about time they open up their wallets a little bit and not tax people out of their houses and homes in Scranton, trying to make up the difference. And last week I mentioned something. I made a mistake there. It wasn't the American Accountability Federation, it was Foundation. And of course it's financed by none other than Donald Trump. And one of their main methods is right out of the Putin playbook to accuse politicians of being groomers and pedophiles. Now, there was almost a shooting in New Jersey. A guy walked in with an AR-15 and shot into the ceiling, and there wasn't even a basement. There's supposed to be pedophilia productions downstairs. You know, and this crazy boom, 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 you know, into the ceiling. And there was nothing going on there. It was a QAnon baloney. So there's a couple of organizations you should watch out for. The Heritage Foundation, American Accountability Foundation, American Family Council, Fox News. Essentially, it's totally disgusting when I hear a reporter that he's siding with Putin. And Rand Paul from Kentucky just called the Ukraine part of Russia. Now, so the point is that we have to put up with these people out of these other states. They affect you, they affect me, they affect everybody. And it's a real shame because if anybody's an embarrassment, they are, not Joe Biden. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson.
By the way, I'm proud of the aid he's given to countries, even humanitarian aid he's sending to Poland and everywhere else. So stop your barking and find something productive to do. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too. That exhausts the sign-in sheet. Would anyone else like to address council?
Good evening, Marie Schumacher. Tonight is sort of a whatever happened tonight. Like following Joan, I believe we were told in February the acoustics were going to be improved in this room. So whatever happened to that? I heard what you said, so we'll hope.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Sorrente? Where are the figures on maintenance and who's paying for those?
Our request for a public caucus is still out there. We're still waiting a response from the chief. We're hopeful that in the next few weeks.
Maybe you need an arm twisting rather than an invitation. Another one, Naog Park Pool Complex. We spent money for that expensive report, and they came back with everything from, lazy river and all kinds of things. And now which one has been picked?
We haven't selected one yet. We're still trying to put the puzzle pieces together in terms of the funding.
No, what are you trying to put together?
The puzzle pieces in terms of the funding. We did receive a grant from DCNR, I believe, for $2 million. We have a $2 million match, and we have some other funding opportunities that are still out there. And
Is there going to be any water there this summer?
this summer, no.
Nothing again?
I'm going to be realistic and honest with you.
Yeah.
We're looking at
Yeah, well, no, that's-
2024 by the earliest.
Okay. The Pocket Park,
I did get an update on that last week too. The fill is being tested a second time. Once it passes inspection, the fill will go in, and then construction will, the actual work will begin once it's filled and settled. With the completion by the end of this construction season.
Yeah.
For the Pocket Park.
Okay, when are we ever going to get a land bank report? I don't recall ever seeing any information on how many properties they've taken, how many they've sold, how they've been used. Okay.
We'll request that.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions too. Has anybody checked to see how many taxpayers paid their property taxes in full? And how does it compare with what you had in the budget for how the cash flow was going to go? And when are we going to see a cash flow report?
We'll request that. I did get numbers, but I think it was in a conversation. It wasn't in writing, but I'll get it in writing on the taxes.
Okay, and I thought I had another one. Oh, yes, on the next phase of Meadowbrook, how many of those rights of way have been under contract?
I believe the bidding either is about to close, or the bid timeline is about to close or did close in the last week for the services for appraisals and surveying over there. I know that was put out in the last couple of weeks. I
It
just
was?
can't
Okay.
remember the timeline.
Okay, and then last week, Mr. Schuster mentioned right at the end about there was the final, a signature was given on what is the next step in now in that process?
So I believe that, I have to double check with this, but the DEP permit had to be amended, and I was told that wasn't gonna take too long. It should have been done by now, so now I believe it's just a matter of time of just scheduling the work to be completed with the property owners.
And that would have been after that last signature, correct, or?
Yes, as soon as the last signature came in for that, they were able to send the request to amend the DEP permit
Now,
to
does that have to
DEP.
be, does that clean out have to be contracted out, or is the DPW going to do that?
It was already bid out, based off an emergency declaration in the fall, so that's why we have that price tag for it. So now it's just a matter of just scheduling with the homeowners for access to the hole.
Superb. Okay, my time is up. Thank you.
So, yeah, that was last Tuesday afternoon. I don't know what time it was, maybe 3 o'clock. We got an email saying that the last property owner had signed off. They should be able to start moving ahead with that. So now, yes, it's just going to be scheduled with the property owners and when the crews get out there.
Yes, because the property owners did, sign off for the initial.
Yeah.
But to go back in, we had to amend the DEP permit, so they had to sign off on the amendment to it. And there was one property owner that took a little longer
Yeah.
than expected, but that came in last week. So we just need that amended permit and then to schedule the crews to go out there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council?
Tom Coyne, Manuka. Members of council, as the mayor is speaking forward, the microphone in front of her in caucus is pushed away by the cornucopia of paperwork in front of her that excludes the microphone from picking up the volume. I understand she is projecting forward the voice from you, but without that microphone, the speakers do not work. The speakers in the back work fine for any of these speakers here who properly have a speaker and have a microphone in place. It is not totally the fault of the sound system in here. It is a matter of having a microphone completely away from your face when you speak. I will wait in fifth order to find out if we have any responses yet on the DUI for the police officers. The city community plan that was shown today, we were shown the popular vote and the city's plan. Then we switched to another slide, and it looked, though I did not have a copy of it, it looked like the slide of the proposed plan ignored the entire intent of the popular vote and reverted back to what the original plan was without the input of the community. I'll have to be able to look at those slides to verify it, but when I looked at the color matching from the first screen to screen 5 on their presentation, it looked like the edits that the public put in place were completely disregarded. ARPA funding. I've requested before, who were the community movers who started this plan? The unnamed people. We have yet to figure out with all of the meetings who these unnamed community people came together in secretive meetings to bring up this plan before it rolled forward. There are no names, there are no groups, there are no communities disclosed. And without that, there is no way for a citizen or anyone to decide whether or not someone has come in, put in their input for their own self-serving interest to direct funds in a form of nepotism to their own business or business dealings. Without clarity of who was involved in the initial setup of this before it even went to this group, we're blind to be able to audit whether or not there are personal fingers in this before it even gets to the population. In this document, it notes that we are upgrading the city environment. Why are we upgrading the city's IT environment and the IT structures when we are outsourcing it? If we're getting rid of the IT and we're getting rid of most of it in-house and it's going to be handled by .gov and other organizations, then why are we improving it here? Why are we buying a new car for a garage that we're about to sell? Last week I talked about the electric vehicles. I said I thought that I had saw an article out there for the funding for these electric vehicles coming from the ARPA funding. I was told that I shouldn't believe everything that I read. What I noticed in this slide here was electric vehicles. Line 6.01, line 6 on that, surprisingly enough, out of these funds, has electric vehicles. It seems that 4 weeks before this even came up, when this council was asked for funding for some of the plans to vote on, electric vehicles were put forward without full funding, and out of the documentation today, it seems that was cut out of the top of it to be put in this plan. Again, there are choices on electric vehicles, but it gets a little bit discomforting when city takes money off the top for its own self-serving interests and allocates that prior to the input and the health and the structure of the community. And we have people who need money, not charities who do testing, but people who need to eat, who are put at the back of the line. This is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council this evening? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Mr. King, do you have any motions or comments this evening?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Schuster, do you have any motions or comments?
No, nothing at this time.
Dr. Rothschild, do you have any motions or comments?
I do not, thank you.
I just have a couple things in terms of Mr. Coyne's request on the two SPD officers. We are still awaiting an official response from Chief Carroll. I did bring it, we did bring it up with the mayor before too, so we're hoping to get a response soon. Mr. Voldenberg, would we be able to request an update on a request I sent to you a couple weeks ago regarding water runoff at 339 Wheeler Avenue? It was in the code enforcement report, but there was no action taken.
I'll get an update,
The
Mr.
resident reached out to me again last night. Thank you. And there's also another thing to send along to code enforcement. There was an issue with garbage in the 200 block of Sherwood Court between Linden Street and Roslyn. And I actually took a ride by in there last night, and it is a complete mess, and I can't really tell where it's originating from, but if we could send code enforcement out there on that as well.
I'll take care of it, sir.
And that is all I have for this evening. Thank you. Schuster?
One thing I have, Frank, we did get a response, so the questions I asked about the Labor Council billing, we did get the response back, and I sent back a response to you last night to send forward to the administration or to the current solicitor that's working on it. I did speak with him in executive session that I'd still be looking for that information and how to move forward with redaction if need be. So if you could move forward with that
I
email
will
I sent
follow
last
up
night.
in the morning, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
just one comment. It had been brought up in the past about the segregation of funds with the garbage fee and the general fund. We brought that up as well. And we were told that that's currently under litigation, so it couldn't be discussed at this time. That's what we were told by the city's attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Voldenberg?
5B for introduction, an ordinance creating and establishing special city account number as noted, entitled Finance Director, for the receipt of and disbursement of grant monies from the Willery Foundation and Lackawanna College for payment of the new Finance Director position for the city of Scranton.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
Make a motion.
Second?
On the question?
On the question, as this piece has come up before us a couple times, and now we're accepting we're looking to establish a special account for this. I am going to be voting no to this. I am against this, this private funding for this city position here. And to be clear, council did vote on this, on the original intent of this legislation over a year ago, and the original intent was to look at lowering the city's taxes. So I'm going to read it again. This is the third time I've read it. The monies of $50,000 was to undertake a study to evaluate tax policy, billing and collections with the goal of increasing collection rates, strengthening internal controls, eliminating waste, and improving tax relief for the city of Scranton. I voted yes for the initial intent of this document, but I am against this funding going to the private funding of this position in the city. That's all.
Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it and so moved.
5C for introduction, a resolution approving in accordance with Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, a plan of financing of the Scranton-Lackawanna Health and Welfare Authority and declaring that it is desirable for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the city of Scranton for Scranton-Lackawanna Health and Welfare Authority to undertake a project for the North Pocono Public Library.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5D for introduction, a resolution authorizing the Director of the Department of Public Works of the City of Scranton to sign the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation Form M950AA, authorizing Riley Associates, City Engineer, to act as an agent and submit highway occupancy permits on behalf of the City of Scranton.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5E for introduction, a resolution authorizing the City of Scranton to accept an A 2022 Mower Max MMB Gen 3 per Buy-Board Cooperative Purchasing Contract number 3861 with AtMax Equipment Company from Keystone Sanitary Landfill.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5F for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program for the Kaiser Avenue Flood Mitigation Design Narrative.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5F be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5G for introduction, a resolution amending Resolution Number 48, 2022, entitled Reappointment of Jerry J. Weinberger, Esquire, 611 North Webster Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18510, as a member of the Board of the Scranton-Lackawanna Health and Welfare Authority. Mr. Weinberger's term will expire on December 31st, 2027, to reflect the end of Mr. Weinberger's term as December 31st, 2024.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5G be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
Just on the question, we had already gone through these, but they have since changed the end of the term for all of them, is that, or it wasn't included initially, or?
I believe the end of the term was in there for 2027, where on all of them, and it should have been 2024 for 5G and 5H, and then 2025 for 5I,
Okay,
instead of 2027.
just for clarification, thank you.
So also on the question, that was going to be similar to my question, was there a mistake made that these were granted a 5-year term and they've now changed to 2 or 3?
I don't know if it was staggered terms where the appointments might have been held over, but we could find that out.
Yeah.
Mr. Boldenberg, could you be able to see
will.
what the issue was there?
And this is just introduction, so we'll have the answer before we ultimately vote it through. Thank you.
Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5H for introduction, a resolution, amending resolution number 49, 2022, entitled Reappointment of David Fanoff, 1812 Academy Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, as a member of the board of the Scranton-Lackawanna Health and Welfare Authority. Mr. Fanoff's term will expire on December 31st, 2027, to reflect the end of Mr. Fanoff's term as December 31st, 2024.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5H be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved?
Second?
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5I for introduction, a resolution, amending resolution number 50, 2022, entitled Reappointment of William R. Laser, CPA, PFS, CFE, 677 Mary Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18508, as a member of the board of the Scranton-Lackawanna Health and Welfare Authority. Mr. Laser's term will expire on December 31st, 2027, to reflect the end of Mr. Laser's term as December 31st, 2025.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5I be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
6th order, no business at this time. 7th order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for adoption, resolution number 56, 2022, appointment of Marissa Duffy, 105 Pequest Drive, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, as Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Scranton, effective April 11th, 2022.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second?
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothschild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B for consideration by the Committee on Public Safety for adoption, resolution number 57, 2022, accepting a donation presented to the City of Scranton Fire Department from Greg L. Sunday and Joan M. Sunday in the amount of $5,000 in memory of Scranton firefighter Stephen Sunday to purchase equipment.
What is the recommendation of the vice chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety?
As Vice Chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothschild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C for consideration by the Committee on Public Safety for adoption, resolution number 58, 2022, accepting a donation from the Griffin Pond Animal Shelter of a Dean and Tyler K-9 bite suit in the amount of $1,360.38, provided to the City of Scranton.
What is the recommendation of the vice chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety?
As Vice Chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second?
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothschild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D for consideration by the Committee on Public Safety for adoption, resolution number 59, 2022, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a lease purchase agreement with Leasing 2, Inc. to finance the purchase of a Sutphen Custom Rescue in the amount of $715,000 for the City of Scranton Fire Department for a period of 7 years commencing May 1st, 2022.
What is the recommendation of the Vice Chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety?
As Vice Chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, Frank, could we reach out to the fire chief and just see, there was reference made here that this vehicle was an older vehicle from 2009. Can we just send correspondence asking what's the usual lifetime of some of these vehicles and what years, what are the years of the other vehicles in the fire department?
I will, sir.
Thank you.
And I just to add on to that, I think some of the backup did state that, you know, the rescue truck is something that goes out on every call, whereas not all the engines or trucks go out on every call, but the rescue is one that goes out on every call.
I did see that in the backup.
And they have been having issues with it, I believe, for the last year or so. I believe they were using the hazmat truck as the rescue truck for a little while too. But just to add on to that.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothschild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
Eighth order, 8A, file to council number 9, 2022.
This piece of legislation is the updated zoning ordinance. It is still tabled to allow for additional input and any changes via amendment. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.